Join in and feel the spirit of it.
This was written by Wallace Willis, a Choctaw freedman, around 1862. So what I'd like you to do is feel the vibration and stand up. And when we're singing this, I want you to imagine that chariot and what you would paint it and what colors it would be as we sing this song which you know so well. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, a sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. Oh, a band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Here we go, swing low, a sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. A swing low, a sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Sometimes I'm up and sometimes I'm down. Coming for to carry me home. But still my soul is heavenly bound. Coming for to carry me home. Sing it out. Swing low, a sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, a sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Coming for to carry me
Thank you for singing that so beautifully. We'd like to bless our children now and have them go out with their Sunday school teacher. Sade, you're teaching them today, right? Yay. Co-teaching them. Yay. Hello. Any other kids want to come up and be blessed up front? Donna, can you lead us in the song that blesses them on their way? We sing a song to the kids called Face of God. You know, you haven't been here before, have you? Have you? Okay. Because what we say is that you have the face of God, and you do. I can see the love shining out of your eyes. And so we just like all the big people just like to say thank you for being here, and we sing this song with you. And here's how it goes.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. One more time as we lead them out. You are the face of God.
blessed to have the faces of God in our midst and those little beautiful faces. And I get to look out at all your faces of God. When things happen like they did this past week, it really makes us appreciate one another. I want to talk about grief this week and just have us be with this challenging topic together. I want to start up by talking to you about grief is not a stranger to us, to any of us. Sometimes we hide it away somewhere, but it knows us. It knows every one of us. And in fact, it's been stalking us ever since we were born, says Martine Prechtel. That as soon as we came out of our mother's womb, we cried. And our family was like, oh, hopefully they were there. And there was this combination of grief at leaving the heavenly realms and being in this little strange body and praise for the wonder of it all. So Martine Prechtel says that grief and praise mysteriously are sisters or brothers. They come together. And in our human life, they can't be separated. When you think about it, all of creation is familiar with grief and praise because something comes out of nothing and then lets go of form and returns into nothing, and so on and so on. This is how creation works. So, impermanence. This process is just of the stuff of who we are. So grief knows us, and we are bound to have grief because impermanence exists. Nothing is permanent. No state inside of us is permanent either. So we've got to bear this in mind when we face into grief, that this pain is not permanent. This joy, this thing that we want to hang on to, will end. It will pass. The great thing is that to know human suffering is what teaches us compassion. A great grief rippled through our community this week, and a great compassion. Our dear friend Ruthie lost her beautiful 21-year-old daughter last Sunday. I got the call right after being here with you in this wonderful service that we had on blessing. And then I picked up my phone and received the call that Jaruna had died, taken her life. A beautiful singing angel, a beautiful being, all too soon, all too soon. The Japanese haiku master Issa wrote right after the death of his beloved daughter, "The world of dew is the world of dew, and yet, a drop of dew. We look upon it on a little blade of grass with awe and appreciate its beauty, complete and whole in that eternal moment, but then the blade of grass shakes and the dewdrop falls off." So that's what the haiku poet was talking about. And yet, he said it twice. How to reconcile ourselves to the and yets in life, to this feast of losses in our human life. So today, with your help, it will help me to reconcile my heart to the absence of this bright young one that we loved so passionately. The leaf that hosts the dewdrop receives moisture from that little drop of beauty, and the grass stays green a little bit longer. So can we let our losses feed us in some strange way? If so, it's such a difficult meal with a long aftertaste of sadness. But together we humans know these lingering sadnesses, and in one way or another, we are one in our grief just as we are in our love. That's what I want to be with you together about today. And our next song is "I'll Fly Away, Sweet Jesus, I'll Fly Away."
This is written in 1929 by Albert E. Brumley. The first time I heard this at a funeral, it just knocked my socks off. So, just if you can listen to the words, and if you know it, please sing along. I won't pick on you, Richard. and music is such a balm at these times. Some bright morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to that home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away when the shadows of this life have gone. I'll fly away like a bird from these prison walls. I'll fly. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Oh, how glad and happy when we meet. I'll fly away. No more cold iron shackles on my feet. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joys will never end. I'll fly away one more time. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Fly away.
So many beautiful songs have been written through the years to comfort us, like almost nothing else can do. When we sing together, we can feel that comfort of the spirit and the love coming through. And poetry is like that too, and things that people write. You know, when people express themselves after a grief, they are working it through, and it becomes art, right? And that art becomes a praise for the beauty of life, even in the midst of grief. So I've asked Karen to come and read a beautiful quote that it's about what grief does to us.
I have a cold, so forgive me. This is really lovely. It's by Rhonda Riley from her book, An Enchanted Life of Adam Hope. Grief is a powerful river in flood. It cannot be argued or reasoned or wrestled down to an insignificant trickle. You must let it take you where it is going. When it pulls you under, all you can do is keep your eyes open for rocks and fallen trees. Try not to panic and stay face up so you will know where the sky is. You will need that information later. Eventually its waters calm, and you will be on the shore, far from where you began, raw and sore, but clean, and as close to the hold as you will ever be again.
Okay. In the honor of the gospel, in the honor of using music to move us through experiences, I'd like you to listen to the song and you'll catch on to the words, and please feel free to stand up, and whatever words are capturing you and whatever grief you're in, whatever your grief is about, this is an opportunity to let it go and to give it back to God. And this song is, I first heard Issei Barnwell from Sweet Honey in the Rock. I got to study with her for 5 days, and this song has permeated my soul ever since then. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. I'm going home to live with God. There'll be no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. I want to see my mother, I want to see my mother, I want to see my mother. I'm going home to live with God. There'll be no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. I'm going up to see King Jesus. I'm gonna shake his loving hand. I'm gonna tell him about all my troubles traveling through this land. Here we go. There'll be no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. Keep that going, no more. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. I'm going home to live with God. Get together, here we go. Soon I will be done. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. I'm going home to live with God. One more time. There'll be no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. I'm going home to live with God. I'm going home to live with.
Wow, we just thank our musicians for bringing that through. history of African American, Native American people who have been suffering a whole lot and brought through beauty like this, through their suffering. And even though it's talking about heading on home to heaven, to the place where we'll be done with all the suffering, beautiful songs like this help us to be able to stay here. They help us to be able to feel into what we're feeling and receive comfort from hearing one another sing it and feel the surging through our body of the emotions and the passion that we have, so that the grief doesn't get stuck that way. So I think singing like this, songs about our heavenly home and about our trials and tribulations, it helps us feel things, and that's what grief is about. We've got to feel sometimes. We've got to feel things that are harder to feel. And so I have a David White poem for you now that's about that. David White, you know who he is. Such a great poet from Ireland. And before I read you the one that's really particularly about grief, called The Well of Grief, I wanted to read you one that he wrote called Return, because he's talking here about that we can have grief for more than just people that pass. We can have grief for our homeland. We can have grief for great things that we've lost like that, huge things, maybe political freedoms, maybe, there's many big losses that we can relate to. And so this poem, Return, has us open our hearts to imagine all the different kinds of grief that humans have felt. And he says, the day started with a flurry of gulls and a single cry, as if I had spoken, and out of the deep cave where my tongue lies, birds were scattering in an open sky. I went to the rail and watched them rise over the gray clouds as if the sky were a sea, and the sea was cold now, full of shapes and the horsetails of winter. And I spoke involuntarily out of a delighted mouth the old, strange word, Ireland, Ireland. Joy when uttered, grief when heard. Isn't that beautiful? The well of grief. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning downward through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink. Those who will not slip beneath the surface on the well of grief, turning downward through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small, round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. We will never know the source from which we drink the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small, round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. The well of grief. Richard, I'd love for you to sing your song now. We don't know all the griefs that we've all been through, but we know some of them. As we get to know one another more deeply, it's really important to get to know one another so that we are articulate about the loves that we've known, and articulate about the losses that we've had. And then when grief comes, we can share it more deeply with one another because we're aware, right? And so I don't know if you know this, but Richard's mother died from committing suicide. And his lover died from his namesake. And it's a lot to bear, and through that he's done, of course, so much work through the years on himself, and so much grieving and creating, grieving and praising, and bringing it through to beauty. And so this is one of those songs that he created after your mother died, right?
Mm-hmm. You sit over here.
Want me to sit there?
Just over there instead of
Okay.
the hinterlands. My mother was a Margaret Iris. She almost died when I was like 3, and had one of these experiences. Came back and found herself in 50s America. Says, "What the hell? Go back and take care of the child." That's what her mission was. Thank you, Mom. A lot of pain. And where did she go with that? She went to Eastern philosophy and what's going on here? Found yoga, brought Bikram yoga to Ashland 30 years ago, she's something. She, and all this good input could not help the basic bedrock of whatever it was. Rage. Disconnect. And so she shot herself. And I wrote a couple of pieces of therapy, And then I was like, a song comes. And a moment, it's like, this is like, what? I go, really? This is the song? Mom, this doesn't quite sound like you. Anyway. Whatever. She's got a Cuban band in the third bardo or something on their rooms. Really? Okay. Anyway, wrote some words to it, I didn't. That was actually something. Came. A song called Changes, Ephemeral. Sorry to be taking so much time. I didn't even think I was going to talk. Whatever. It has a subtitle. I can't write a song without a subtitle. Parentheses, Margot's tune. Changes. Calm the music down somewhat. Spirit comes with 1,000 faces, smiling. Here am I, midst the light and the space. And the light has taken form, and the forms keep going through. Changes. The river flows to the sea. Spirit sings with 1,000 voices, calling. Here am I, amidst the tears and rejoicing, and the sound has become a song, and the songs keep going through. Changes. The sea mists rise on the wind. For the weary pilgrim who's traveling on through time, the lonely night shall surely turn to dawn. A stranger in a strange land, she winks and then she's gone. Changes. Changes. Spirit moves in 1,000 dances, flowing. Here am I, midst the swirling enchantment. For life's a passing dream, each passing a new beginning. As a snowflake graces the stream. The river flows to the sea, and the sea mists rise on the wind. Hello, Mom. Start again.
What are we doing here? We're all just walking one another home, said Ram Dass. Remembering that, we might be much more respectful of one another with the precious little time that we have walking this pathway together toward home. I thought I'd have a lot more time with Jaruna. I met her last year, and she and her mom reached out to come to the Journey to Completion group, but it wasn't the right timing for her. She was too in a depressed state, and then later she reached out to me several times, and I talked with her around the kitchen table about her life, and I got to know what an amazing, creative, bright, light person she was, and how much joy she brought into all of her friends' lives, and how Ruthie is a real central hub of community in this town, and I got to know them. A few weeks before last Sunday, I got a text from Jaruna, and she said, "I'm ready now for the Journey to Completion." And I said, "Well, I'm not starting one right now, but we'll talk about it." Well, I never got to talk to her again. So you never know, just don't know. So Denise Levertov, who's been one of my favorite poets through the years, wrote a poem about grief that I want to start off with, and it's about welcoming grief into our lives. And this week, Ruthie really invited all of us that had known Jaruna to be welcomed into grief. So this poem says, "Ah, grief, I should not treat you like a homeless dog who comes to the back door for a crust, for a meatless bone. I should trust you. I should coax you into the house and give you your own corner, a worn mat to lie on, your own water dish. You think I don't know you've been living under my porch all this time? You long for your real place to be ready before winter comes. You need your name, your collar, and your dog tag. You need the right to ward off intruders, to consider my house your own, and me your person, and yourself my own dog, grief." So in our culture, far too often we're pushing grief away like an old dog that we don't want to come near us. I really relate to this poem. To give grief a place inside of us and not starve it outside with tear-stained handkerchiefs stuffed into our ears so we can't hear its doggy howls. but rather to invite ourselves to know grief and to admit that grief knows us. So to take this metaphor of the dog to a little more intense level, maybe a more transformative shamanic level, we need courage to befriend grief, even though it may come to us like not a friendly little dog, but a howling wolf dog sometimes. And we fear that it can rent our clothes and tear us open. Such courage it takes to give ourselves over to our power animal that way, to the ways of empowerment. Grief can and most likely will dismember us. That's really okay, because Goddess knows we need to go down into the underworld at times and let go of our current identity. We so easily get stuck in places too small for who our souls really are. So to let grief in is to be gifted by our deeper self, gifted with a new life, right? A broader perspective, a much bigger, more whole life. Really to grow, to see from God's eyes, the Weechol say, or to become a bodhisattva of compassion, as the Buddhists say. The only way we get there really is through opening ourselves, allowing ourselves to be opened by what comes across our path. To let this wolf dog out of the closet or out from under the porch, we can get afraid to do that, afraid that it will overcome us, and afraid that others will be afraid of us feeling all that and flee from us, right? But Ruthie and Jamaica, her other daughter this week, they didn't push the grief dog under the porch. They didn't hide their grief from us. They let us in to feel the gift of grief. They blessed us with being present to hear the roars and the screams and the cries and the groans of their hearts broken. And all of our hearts broke wide open. And we all met so deeply and so authentically there at the crossroads of the broken heart, the only place we really truly can meet. For the 3 days while dear Juna's body lay on ice in the flower and candle-filled room, people quietly flooded in support and grieving. It's not that we felt obliged to be there each day, it's that we couldn't stay away. We felt compelled to be there. We wanted to be together, to speak together of our sorrow. We wanted to feel as deeply as our hearts are made to go. We wanted to hug and look into one another's eyes and touch the center of our love. It was the worst of times, and it was the best of times, all wrapped into one. We dealt there for three precious days in the world between worlds. And it certainly was one of the most poignant, unspeakably precious times of my life. Grief and praise intermingled like rain on the dust. That's what Martine calls this book, Rain on the Dust. If any of you have lived in New Mexico or places like that where it's really dry, or California nowadays, you can understand that precious feeling of the rain on the dust and the smell of that. Sometimes we get so caught up in day-to-day life that it's only through a tragic loss that we come to appreciate and savor the beautiful, simple little things that we often overlook, like rain and the dust. The other night, Friday night, I was invited to host a meeting with the young people who knew Juna well, and about 30 of them came. And they told their stories of their amazing, fun-loving, caring sister who took such good care of them and had such a quirky sense of humor. And I realized that as we sat around that campfire, that when humans come together to struggle, to wrench meaning from loss, and try to find our way through the valley of the shadow of death, we speak with such wisdom and remarkable insight. Every word the youth spoke was like a jewel. Whether a sadness about what they might have done differently, or remembering a time when they laughed and enjoyed the fun times together. When we share together like this as humans, we really help each other. And we teach each other lessons of a lifetime. So to be fully human is to care so deeply and attending well to death prompts the most eloquent form of caring imaginable. When those we love die, a part of us dies with them. When those we love are sick or burdened by some difficult disease, we do feel their pain, and it's all worth it, especially that, feeling the pain together, because grief and death are sacraments, or they can be. A sacrament means, to make something holy. A sacrament symbolizes communion, the act of bringing us together. So to comfort another is to bring in our strength, to support, to console, to be with him in his aloneness, to commiserate and share the pain and not to try to change it. Holy communion is what we do when we grieve together, and I think the early Christians were knowing that. That's why they named it Holy Communion. And they used the symbols of the bread and the wine as a remembrance of the grief that they knew together and that bonded them together. We cherish our precious moments of remembering our love, remembering one another, and we cherish the help that we get from one another to let go. We surrender. We have to surrender. Dust to dust. The act of releasing a loved one from all further obligations as she dies, to tell her it's all right. It's all right. That she's safe and that we love her and she can go now. This is life's most perfect gift. The final expression of unconditional love. That we let go for dear life instead of hanging on for dear life. Adversity and loss doesn't always bring out the best in people. But the reason it so often does is because adversity focuses us to work within tightly drawn limits. Everything within those limits is heightened. 3 days, body on ice. We receive as gifts things that we've tended to take for granted within those limits like that. For a brief, blessed time, what matters to us most really does matter, and we drop everything else. How do we respond when it's so close to home, like when we get a terminal sentence, or when someone very close to us is going to die, or when a love affair has ended and there's nothing we can do about it? Do we often say, "What did I do to deserve this?" The answer is nothing. Nothing. When I worked in the battered women's movement years ago, often the battered woman would say, "What did I do to deserve this?" And we always said to them, "Nothing." When children are battered, nothing, nothing, you did nothing. Against unimaginable odds, we have been given something that we don't deserve at all, which is this life. And with this life comes grief. Comes all sorts of losses. It's our birthright. This is what the Buddhists try to get across to us, and all their emphasis on valuing our precious human incarnation. Life is a gift, and death is part of the package. But these precious human lives are such a tremendous gift, because unless we armor our hearts, no one can protect us from loss, so we've got to do something with it. Because without feeling the depths of things, nothing really matters. Break your life into 1,000,000 pieces and ask yourself what of any real value might endure after you're gone. The pieces that remain will each carry love's signature. Without love, we are left only with the aching hollow of regret, but that haunting emptiness where love might have been. Give yourself to love, like the song says. Give yourself to love. Love is what we're here for. That was one of Jaruna's favorite songs. Martine Prechtel says in his book on grief and praise that we've got to speak out our grief and cry it out and moan it out and express it fully in the company of many, because then the great beauty is present. And I'll tell you, that's what I experienced this week. It was a tremendous gift to be called to be in a community like that really went for it. On Wednesday morning, when it was time to take Jaruna's body to the crematorium. Some of you may have heard about it because the ripple effect of it went throughout the community, but maybe over 100 people gathered at the home, all singing songs and waiting. And the mother and the family and the sister were inside saying their last goodbyes before the lid was put on the coffin. The coffin beautifully painted by all of the friends throughout those 3 days. Love stories, pictures, so many things on the coffin, beautifully painted. The mother and sister and family throwing their bodies across the coffin, weeping, crying, and we all waiting outside. And then the moment came when all the strong men carried the coffin on their shoulders, and Ruthie told us, don't stop. Once you pick her up, you have to keep turning it and keep moving it, because we don't want her spirit to stop anywhere along the way. And this is a Balinese custom, to carry the casket like this to the funeral pyre. What an incredible ritual. Gongs and deep-sounding horns and drums, and everyone shouting and screaming and crying and singing. 100 people walking down the streets and through the cemetery to the crematorium, and being with the family as we moved the casket into the fire. What a way to have it happen. Martine Prechtel said, the main thing is, of course, when it comes to losing what you love, we've got to get to work ahead of time before we have to grieve so much, so that we're educated with some of the details of the lives around us, so that when the time comes, we can speak the necessary beauty to metabolize our sorrow. When the time comes that we can speak the necessary beauty to metabolize our sorrow. That's what this community of beloved people was able to do with Ruthie and her family. Ruthie had called in a community that knew her deeply, and so people could take it all in and realize what it meant and help to metabolize the sorrow. Grief calls us to live this way, to live with a child's infinite curiosity, not to close down so quickly on people and judge them and put them in boxes so that we can't even know them, but to stay open and wonder with ingenious, fresh eyes, and when somebody hurts us, to say, what was that about? No, not to close down on them, because we've got to get to know the world around us without invading it with our opinions. We've got to get to know people suffering without feeling superior to them in some way. We've got to get to know the magnificent ways of everybody, of every creature. Above all, let's learn curiosity. Learn how to approach the world with respect. Don't say, this is mine about everything. Learn to wait for permission and be constantly appreciating and releasing. This is truly loving. Instead of predatorily trying to impress or possess another person, instead we want to learn to see what they're seeing and to feel what they're feeling. Love means that we do what we have to do to see what and how they see. And when somebody commits suicide, this is a very big calling. It's a deep work. And how many of us can stay aware in the presence of such a teaching? Love is always courting us through every single thing that happens. Instead of us trying to con one another into our arms, us in our capitalistic culture trying to sell people this and sell people that in an egotistical way, let's really commit to giving one another this deep gift of love that they don't have to return to us. That's really loving. That's courting someone. That's praise of life, freely giving our praise all the time, no matter what comes back to us. And you never know, it might all just work out that when you both both might get to this point of really giving to one another. It's a really beautiful thing, whether it's with a gorilla, or a horse, or a doggy, or a distant mountain, or the divine creator, or the earth, or another person with a gorilla or a mountain in their eyes. When we love with this kind of intimate curiosity, then later on, hopefully a long time later, when either of you beauty makers loses the other and sorrow comes, then neither one of you will be at a loss for the details of grief and praise to express in such a way that miracle of having lived and loved with this person. And you're not left without a masterful tongue to speak your loss back into the plasma of continuing life, says Martine Prechtel. You're not left without a masterful tongue to speak your loss back into the plasma of continuing life. We must let our grief turn our losses into beauty. That's the gist of it. Beauty is anything seen, felt, or realized that charms or delights the better part of us into wanting to live on in order to see, feel, and understand more. You know, when somebody commits suicide, it's sometimes people are worried that others will want to too, but that's why it's so important to be able to metabolize the sorrow and the grief and let the grief turn our losses into beauty. If we can let ourselves have our deepest emotions about the prospect of losing what we love most, and let ourselves feel out the deepest feelings about the loss of what we do love, then these deepest feelings of love, no longer having to hide away or just be focused too narrowly on just one person or something, these feelings of love start to well up in our lives. And our hearts do break open, and we start to be rivers of creativity. And we make gardens and beautiful clothing and jewelry and songs, and we dance and do acrobatics and woodworking and weaving and knitting and ritual, and we start giving out our energy to building community on and every kind of very good and beautiful creation that we make in this world. So this community here of Unity, we're a community like that, you know? I mean, we are here for one another, and I want us to be free to express whatever our griefs are. That's why I wanted to talk about this, you know, because I had such a tremendously hard and tremendously great experience in that community, which a lot of people that come to Unity off and on were there at Ruthie's house, and it just made me appreciate that we are people like this, that we are people who want to touch into life so deeply that we can create out of whatever happens to us the most incredible beauty. Richard, thank you for creating that beautiful song out of the grief that you felt. So many songs have been created. Maybe you've created one. You know, but I think of like Eric Clapton composing Tears in Heaven following his son's accidental death from a fall. I think of the song Fly, sung by Celine Dion, as she described her emotions surrounding the death of her niece, Corinne, who died from cystic fibrosis. I think of Paul McCartney, who wrote Here Today in memory of John Lennon following his tragic shooting. I think of Elton John, who wrote Empty Garden following Lennon's death, and then he wrote Candle in the Wind to remember Princess Diana after her death. What will be the gift that you received from grief and then express to the world? When we embrace how short life is, it is possible to take action in the direction of your dreams. You get what I'm saying? We've got to act and take this energy that's produced during grief and use it, because it will either be used for our demise or our arise. Truly, we are walking one another home on the beauty way every single day. Let's appreciate our dear friends. And I invite you to come to the memorial service this afternoon if you want to at 3 o'clock here. We're expecting hundreds of people. it's a great time to be together in community and just feel the appreciation for this one beautiful friend amongst us who's fallen away. I think that we'll take the offering now, and Donna is going to read it's the lyrics to a song, but she's just going to read them to us, and it's about loving one another in community in this way. So thank you for taking the offering and giving the offering while Donna says this to us.
I just want to say that one of the ways that I transmute feelings is writing poetry. So I wrote this week. Shaken to my core, young woman suicides, mother wails in waves of grief. As a friend and lay chaplain, I come to serve, but what is there really to do but go numb and feel for the grief of the ages? Unimaginable pain. Compassion is all that is left. Deep, deep compassion. So I was really moved to bring this song forth from La Cage aux Folles. I'm going to kind of talk sing it. And I got to sing this. My dad is still here. He's 93. God bless him. And I got to sing this to him many years ago. And it was very powerful. Let's Look Over There by Jerry Herman. How often is someone concerned with the tiniest thread of your life? Concerned with whatever you feel and whatever you touch. Look over there. Look over there. Somebody cares that much. How often does somebody sense that you need them without being told? When you have a hurt in your heart you're too proud to disclose. Look over there. Look over there. Somebody always knows when the world spins too fast and your bubble has burst. Someone puts himself last so that you can come first. So count all the loves who will love you from now till the end of your life. And when you have added the loves who have loved you before, look over there, look over there. Somebody loves you more when your world spins too fast and your bubble has burst. Someone puts himself last so that you can come first. So count all the loves who will love you from now till the end of your life. And when you have added the loves who have loved you before, look over there,